observers feel that the first pick will be one of two players. Shawn Bradley of Brigham Young, the 7'6" junior who didn't play last year or this, serving a Mormon mission in Australia instead.
I love playing with him. I mean, he was a big giant, but his physical presence more than anything. I mean, him being 7'6" is tremendous. You don't know what it does for the game.
I loved it when he'd do his hook shot. I loved it when he'd slam dunk. It's just fun to watch him. I think he's just a great player.
NBA professional sports, it's a fantasy life. It's wonderful. It's a dream come true for 99% of the guys that play. But it's not all fabulous. There are things you have to deal with. There are things that you have to put up with. You get compensated great, but with that, there's a price.
My first thought when I saw Shawn was what a little butterball he was, because he was almost 10 pounds. He had these three little ridges, his cheeks and his nose, and they all lined straight up. That was the only time he was short and fat.
With the father standing at 6'8" and a mom at 6 even, the Bradleys knew their children would be taller than average.
I knew we'd be tall, but I didn't know 7'6".
They had someone do a prediction sometime between when I was born and when I was 2. They said I'd be about 6'11".
While sitting next to Shawn, you can't really tell how tall he is. It's not until you stand up that you realize how tall he really is.
Bradley is one of 4 children. His siblings stand at 6'1", 6'2", and 6'10". However, Shawn's growth pattern was very different. He didn't hit a growth spurt. He grew a steady 3 inches a year.
I remember being in 3rd grade and being told by the teachers at recess I had to play with the 6th graders because they made me play with kids my size rather than my age because I was so much bigger.
He was always head and shoulders above everybody. Even his school teachers, he was taller than.
One of the things we noticed is that, and this is more later than earlier, is that we would treat him older too. And so we had to be very careful not to treat him as a 4-year-old when he was 2.
But Bradley still feels like he should be taller.
I've often told people, I know people on occasion will grow until they're 20 or 21, and I tell people I felt a little ripped off that I stopped growing when I was 17. I'll take 7'6" though.
Ripped off or not, Bradley juggled the issues of being bigger than most.
I learned at a very early age that you know, my size is going to cause people to act differently. They're going to challenge me in many different ways, or they're going to be jealous, or they're going to be ignorant, or they're going to be accepting and understanding.
Bradley knew he was tall, but all the negatives that surrounded being the tallest kid didn't stop him one bit. Basketball became his obsession.
Shawn would role play. He'd go out on the basketball court that we'd made for him and pretend he was playing against some of the great basketball players.
In the small town of Castledale, Utah, Bradley found sports to be the best entertainment.
Sports was a way that we just kind of had a good time. It was either that or getting in a lot of trouble down in the desert, so we chose sports.
Bradley became Emory High School star in not just basketball, but in baseball too.
He was on our high school baseball team as a sophomore, played first base, pitched a little bit.
I led the team in batting average. I had a lot of fun. I didn't play my sophomore year because I didn't think I'd have enough time, but I'd always played baseball growing up.
But even as one of the top talents of the team, the coaches asked Bradley to not play baseball his senior year.
I mean, he didn't think it was fair that I knew that I was going to miss 2 games and try out for the team, that I was potentially taking someone else's opportunity to possibly play, you know, in college or beyond high school.
Turns out, Bradley stayed busy enough with basketball.
had a fun and a neat high school career. So we got a couple of state championships and some major drama and really a lot of fun.
In his junior year, Shawn Bradley led the Emory High School team to win the state championship in the 2A division.
He was a really good scorer, and he led our teams in a lot of ways, but his height was just unbelievable. It was something that you don't ever see.
Besides just his height, Shawn truly knew what it took to win.
He had incredible motivation to want to do it. Had a real competitive nature.
And I used to tell him, when you step onto that court, put everything aside and you just play ball. Just play like you know how to play. And then when you come off the court, you can be nice again. Be an animal out there if you have to.
Bradley became a true legend in Emory County High School.
Even without Shawn, we would have been a very good basketball team. I don't know if we would have won a state championship or, but we would have, even without him, would have been good. But he made us phenomenal. I mean, he was just such a factor defensively. It just, annihilated people. Some teams tried to take it right at him, and he just killed them. And, it was fun to be a part of that.
I get chills thinking about it now because it was a lot of fun and a great experience.
The following year, Emory County High School was moved to 3A and remained undefeated and took the state championship title for the second year in a row.
It was a special group, and Shawn made it extremely special. He was just, unbelievable person and player, and it was just great to be a part of that.
It was just a spectacle, an amazing thing to watch him mature and come into his own as a basketball player, but also as a young man and just such a kind human being.
Colleges all over the nation came to the small town of Castledale, Utah in hopes to recruiting Shawn Bradley.
When the letters started coming in 9th grade and then in high school, I just can't tell you how we were just inundated with all this mail. I mean, just our post office box was just cram-packed full of recruiting letters.
We got a lot of phone calls, a lot of intrusion, but it was for a good reason. I mean, I had the opportunity to play basketball in college.
Through the process, he eventually had to narrow his list of schools he was interested in.
I think my final 5 was Utah, BYU, Arizona, UCLA, and Syracuse. And just one day, after some coaches from BYU came down and did a recruiting trip in Castledale, I just knew I was going to be a Cougar.
I will sign with Brigham Young University.
And we were really thrilled when he decided to go to BYU.
Most people were excited to see Bradley head to BYU, but some, including his high school basketball coach, were a little skeptical.
Well, it was obviously his decision completely. I don't, if it would have been mine, I don't think I would have sent him to BYU with all of his options, but, that's where he chose to go, and I think he made a good decision for himself, and, that's the way it worked out. So
there were comments like, well, what's he going to do at BYU? He should have gone to North Carolina, he should have gone to Syracuse, UCLA, one of these big name programs that'll help prepare him better for the NBA. It seems like the big decisions in my life have been met with much ridicule and misunderstanding, support, unsupport, whatever, but I don't think that's unusual. It was just that a lot of my decisions were so public. It was kind of the beginning of me being able to deal with some of the things that I was going to deal with.
But Bradley knew that BYU offered him what he was looking for, a place where they understood his potential in basketball and at the same time understood his desire to put a hold on his sports ambitions in order to serve as a missionary.
The top 5 were all fine with me playing my freshman year and then going on a mission. And BYU was probably the best fit for someone who wanted to go on a mission.
But after a successful year at BYU, Bradley found the decision to go on a mission a little tough.
Ever since I was little, I said I was going to go on a mission, and I started second guessing my decision. I thought, well, there's been other athletes that have gone to BYU, that are LDS, that haven't served missions, and they've had productive careers. They've been good missionaries, if you will, good examples. And I started thinking maybe that's the course that I should take.
Shawn's bishop drove up from Castledale and gave him some advice that changed his perspective.
He says, Shawn, look, there's thousands of young men and young women out there that are trying to make the decision whether to serve a mission or whether not to. And he says, everyone has a valid reason of why they shouldn't, whatever it might be. It's as big in their life as what your reason is in yours. He says, but you have to make a decision of how you want your name to be viewed. Do you want it to be a reason to go or a reason not to go? Serve. I got the papers back a couple of weeks later and got called to serve in the Sydney, Australia mission, which was very exciting because going foreign, I'm speaking English, sort of.
For 2 years, Elder Bradley served full-time as a representative of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints.
We ought to concentrate on the purpose of missionary work so that, we can better understand exactly what we're supposed to do so that we can help people and bring happiness into their lives too.
Yes, it was a normal mission experience, but at the same time, I did interviews once a month. I did some national media in Australia and tried to get the word out there that Mormons are normal.
Elder Bradley was able to use his experience in basketball throughout his entire mission.
We would try to get kids and we'd kind of do a basketball camp / fireside, and we'd teach these kids some basketball. We'd also share why I was in Australia doing what I was doing. And share a message of the gospel, share a message of principles, of values, of morals, and try to, combine the two.
During his mission, people began to speculate about his future decision, BYU or the NBA.
One way or the other, whether I was going to stay in school or whether I was going to go pro, I needed to make a decision so that we could get through that and I could finish the mission like I needed to, like I was supposed to. Through that process, I decided to go pro, forego the remainder of my college years. That was no small decision. That was met with much anguish and prayer and fasting and contemplation and pondering, research. It was consuming.
As much as Bradley knew BYU was a school for him, he knew it was time to go pro.
I knew that when I made that decision to go pro, I knew it was the right thing for me to do, for me. If you have an opportunity to make millions, why wouldn't you? I mean, if you're not selling your soul and you're being, ethically and morally to the standards that you've chosen to live for yourself, why not? It makes no sense that you do any other thing.
His decision there were many factors involved in that, and one of them that really struck me is that a career-ending injury in college could stop the whole thing. And it was interesting, his first season in the NBA, he actually had quite a significant injury on his knee. And
that decision was not met with understanding all the way around. I mean, I started getting letters and letters and letters. Some of it I would classify as hate mail. Some of it I would classify as worse. My parents got death threats. I mean, please, really. It's university and basketball. Really. It was bizarre.
BYU felt disappointed to not have Bradley on the team, but he knew the NBA was his next step.
Joining Weber at the head of the class is 7'6" Shawn Bradley.
Bradley or Weber, either one would just fit our needs perfectly. But those two specifically for us would be great.
I think the thing that has surprised me the most is that I came off a 2-year mission and I've spent 3 nights in my own bed.
The excitement of the 1993 draft caused Bradley and his agent to wonder where he might start his career as a professional.
If I went number 1, I was going to Golden State. If not number 1, then most probably I was going number 2. And if not number 2, Golden State wouldn't have had a trade. If they'd have picked me number 3, then I'd have gone to Orlando because we knew that there was a trade between 1 and 2. So if I didn't go number 2, then I was probably going to Dallas at number 4. But the chances of that weren't, according to them, were just slim to none. There were pros and better pros. I wouldn't say there's any cons because, yay, it's professional sports. It's playing a game for a living.
With the second pick in the 1993 NBA draft, the Philadelphia 76ers select Shawn Bradley from Brigham Young University.
it was crazy. You know, the Philadelphia, they were the 76ers. I was 7 feet 6 inches tall. They said, why don't you have the number 7'6" and it can all be one little deal. I'm going to be in Philadelphia. You know, the city of brotherly love. Here we go.
There was more love in Philadelphia than Bradley could have ever imagined, but not just brotherly love.
I decided this one time to go to a singles ward, and that's actually where I met Annette.
Annette lived in Philadelphia working as a nanny for a local family.
While I was there, I went to the singles ward and I was speaking about my mission and about I'd been home a year and just what that year had been like, and Shawn happened to be in the congregation.
Shawn and Annette got invited to the same group dinner that evening where they exchanged more than just a glance.
I was the first one to leave out of the group. I just said, well, I gotta go, and as I was saying goodbye, Shawn just said, well, can I really get your number? And everybody just kind of looked at me like, what? And so I just gave him my number and he called me the next day, and well, 2 months later we were married.
Annette didn't know much about basketball or Bradley, so a quick phone call home did the job.
When I first started going out with him, I called home and told my brother that I was going out with Shawn Bradley, that I had a date with Shawn Bradley, and he said, do you know what he plays? And I said, yeah, he plays basketball. And he said, do you know what position he plays? And I said, no. So he told me that he played center, so I would know that when I talked to him. And
well, a quick phone call didn't fill all the questions Annette needed to know, so an interview she had with the sports magazine didn't go quite as planned.
They asked me, so how do you like Shawn playing here, or something like that? And I said, oh, I love the 86ers. And they just looked at me, and I thought, oh my gosh, the 96ers? And everyone just busted up laughing, and I said, the 76ers? And they were like, yeah, the team is called the 76ers.
Shawn said he didn't mind at all and wanted to marry her much sooner than later.
I mean, I'd fallen in love with Annette head over heels, and I think she did for me the same. Thus, we wouldn't have got married in 2 months. I don't know if I could have let her come back to Utah when her job was over to find someone else. I grabbed her when I could.
It didn't take long, but a few weeks after the wedding, the NBA season started and the reality of the new lifestyle of these newlyweds began.
It was really hard when we got married and just trying to deal with, you know, being in the NBA and his contract and just everything. It was a lot for us to just try and stay level-headed about and deal with. And it was not easy for the first probably 5 years of our marriage. It was really hard.
The Bradleys hosted a wedding dinner and invited the team, but the owner came with a little surprise for Annette.
Sure enough, his owner came in with this big fat stogie, and he pulled me aside and said, let me tell you how you need to feed Shawn. And while he was giving me his little pep talk, he was singeing my veil. And I didn't know until he walked away from me. My friend came up and said, I think he just burned your veil. So we looked, and sure enough, there was a hole, and I was so mad, and I just thought, how dare him?
That was just the beginning for Annette. More NBA hurdles were still to come.
Going to his games, and the fans were pretty tough, and I would be screaming at the fans to be nice, and Shawn, when I'd tell him about it, he'd just be like, Annette, just who cares? Let it go. I'm like, I can't. It's so hard for me when I'm sitting with these people that are being mean. I can't stand it. They don't know what a great guy you are, and that it's not all about basketball.
Annette is just this sweet girl from West Valley. You know, she would wear jeans and a t-shirt to the game. Just typical, you know, sometimes throw a baseball cap on and just go to the basketball games and watch her husband play, and couldn't understand why people were booing at times and why others were cheering, and just wanted to go support her man.
It was really a big adjustment, and there were times when I actually thought, I don't know if I'm the right person for you because I can't handle this.
I know it was very hard on her. She got thrown into a world that she had no idea what was going to happen. You know, with the NBA and being an NBA player's wife and dealing with the things that are said about them.
One time I remember Shawn and I were going to dinner with friends, and so I wore some slacks and maybe a button-up shirt or something, and the girls gave me the hardest time. That I cleaned up nice, and I was so mortified. I just thought, this is so not me. I just have to be me and not worry about it.
Having everyone, no matter where we went, look at me. I mean, I'm 7'6", whether they knew I played basketball or not. That guy's tall. And then they look at me and they look at her, and the attitude is, well, how do you rank, and what's the deal, and what are your motives? And suddenly she gets judged without even knowing people.
It's always been a little bit hard for me just because I feel like people judge me, whether I'm, pretty enough for him or good enough for him or whatever. And it's intimidating. But, I just feel like I just have to be me. It was definitely trying at times, but what marriage isn't? So I'm just glad we made it.
The thing that saved her life was when we had Cheyenne, our first baby.
Our first daughter really was a blessing in my life. She just gave me purpose, and she gave me something to focus on instead of the negative or the hard things that I was going through at that time.
After a few difficult years in Philadelphia, Shawn played for a short time at the New Jersey Nets and then made the best move in his NBA career.
We fell in love with Dallas. It was like moving home.
And the saying, everything's bigger in Texas, became true in the Bradley home.
After we had Cheyenne, immediately we had Sierra, then we had Chelsea, then we had Charity. So I had 4 girls in 5 years. And by that time we were in Dallas, and I just was set in being a mom and taking care of them. And of all the places that we were at, the Mavericks by far were my favorite. I loved the people, I loved the team, I loved Mark. His family's great. We had such a great experience being in Dallas.
We really fell in love with Dallas and planned on, after a couple of years, really being there for the rest of our marriage.
Shawn credits his success in Dallas to his relationship with team owner Mark Cuban.
I don't know why Mark and I hit it off so well. I just think there's been a lot of respect for each other right from when we first met. From the values that I've chosen to live and the success that he's had. I just really think we were open, we were honest, and we developed a very strong base for a good friendship right from the beginning.
Dallas Mavericks owner Mark Cuban also admires Shawn Bradley. After agreeing to talk with me, I found out he does most of his interviews while climbing the stair-stepper.
He was, 19 years old or 20 years old when he got into the league, signs his big contract. Everybody has these expectations. And he just got back from a mission. He had no idea what to expect. Nobody was smart enough to spend the time to prepare him. And so he comes in this completely unprepared, with a completely unrealistic set of expectations as the number 2 pick in the draft. And that's not easy.
It wasn't, you're the savior of the organization, we're going to build it all around you, you've got to do it all. It was, we know what you can do that well, knowing where you fit in and understanding what you can bring to the table is key in success. And that's really, through those first 4, 5, 6 years, that's probably what I learned the most. So, and what happened was my skills got better as we understood what our roles were supposed to be.
The best part was Annette, his wife, was probably the most balancing influence to say, look, Shawn, I can handle it at home. Get your butt out there and work.
Mark Cuban had a positive influence on Bradley, his family, and his basketball skills.
Unlike everybody else, I recognized that I had to make it a family decision as opposed to just trying to pressure Shawn like people before him. And I think that's what I did that was a little bit smarter. And as I got to know Annette, and I realized what a support system was like, we came to a better understanding. We played better, played harder, and worked harder, and it showed.
Bradley's basketball skills became a great benefit for the team as he contributed to a growing tradition of a winning record.
I mean, you got Shawn Bradley back there, people are going to think twice about going to the basket. And that was definitely something we liked. But his toughness, I think his toughness more than anything is what helped us as a team. One thing about Shawn, man, he went hard every day in practice, and he brought it in the game.
Bradley says he became good friends with Jason Terry because of his skill with the basketball, but mostly because of his skill with his children.
I noticed him off the court as a great dad, spending time with his kids and as a family, and that's something that's somewhat rare in professional sports.
And when I first got to the team, he was the first one to come up to me and give me tips on what schools to go to for my kids and stuff like that. Just as a person too, off the court, you know, Shawn was great.
After having 8 seasons with the Mavericks, the Bradleys announced their retirement and moved from Texas to Murray City, Utah.
I miss it terribly. I miss it. I mean, I look online sometimes. I have a hard time going to the games. I go once in a while, but I'm still, even though this is my 5th season not playing, I still feel very close to it.
I miss watching Shawn play and seeing him at his best. That was really fun. And I didn't realize how much fun it was while we were doing it until it wasn't there anymore.
Even though the Bradleys miss basketball, they are entering a new stage of life.
The first year or 2 that he was home, it was a little bit hard, you know, and I think harder for him than for me because I started thinking, wow, great, you can pick up the kids, I'm going to the movies.
The Bradley children seem especially happy to have their dad home more often.
I'm glad he's home more. He's home for more activities. Like I just had recently had a play and he was able to come because he wasn't away on like his basketball games.
I like how now that he's not, he's always there. Like he's always like asking me questions about life, like school, boys.
Shawn loves playing basketball with his 2 youngest children, Chase and Chance. And I even took him on a game myself.
Next time I play against Shawn, I better wear my tennis shoes.
Shawn keeps busy with teaching and coaching at a local school in Utah.
He came across the school that's here, West Ridge Academy. It's a residential school for troubled teens, troubled youth, and we just both felt so good about it.
Showing his country's pride, Bradley spent time with the military in Iraq and Afghanistan.
They'd come and we'd shoot hoops. And it might be a plywood floor that they made, you know, the size of a basketball key, or maybe just the 3-point line for high school. But our soldiers were ingenious, man. When their time was down, they made good use of it. In the middle of very harsh conditions, I was so honored to even be able to be there.
Currently, Shawn is running for Utah State Legislator as a state representative.
You know, I grew up in a small town in Emory County. I have an incredible life experience with my mission, with the NBA, with traveling in different parts of the world and many parts of this country. And I hope to be able to use that to make informed and good decisions for the great state of Utah.
I never thought he would go into politics, and I give him my full support and wish him luck. And maybe if he is able to get in there, I'll think higher of politicians.
Am I one of those guys that thinks he knows everything about everything? No, I'm not. I'm one of the people to hope to be able to be part of the government that's for the people, by the people.
Annette and Shawn took their 4 daughters on a special trip to volunteer in India during their summer vacation.
We worked in the leper colonies. We cleaned the wounds of the feet of some of these fantastic people. And it was very graphic and it was very amazing. It was hard at times to get through it. But you'd look in their eyes and they would look at you and they would pat you on the face and their dark, dark skin on our white, pale faces, and they would say this word, and I didn't understand it. When I asked later what it meant, they said, we know God loves us because you came. And those 2 weeks were some of the most profound experiences that I've had in my life.
Testing the waters in a variety of things is Shawn's newest hobby.
That's what's great about our country. We have opportunity here to try stuff. And that's kind of the mode I'm in right now.
Bradley loves what he does now and looks forward with hope, but he will always treasure his basketball career.
It was a lot of insanity, but I'm glad I had Annette to do it with, because there's no way I could have handled it without her.
I think part of me thinking that he's a great player is that I know all of him, you know, and there's so much more to people than just playing the game. There's so much to Shawn, and I just think there's so much that I love about him.
But Shawn Bradley admits that watching others play basketball on television instead of having people watch him is a lot harder than he ever imagined.
I honestly feel if I took a few months, I could probably get in shape and go play again. Whether that's true or not, I don't know, but I also know that I'm at a stage, I'm in my late 30s. I know what it takes to be ready, and the guys that are there now are strong and fast and young. and I'm transitioning into a different stage of life right now, and I'm enjoying it.